Well, it's very well known that the head of the SEC, Gary Gensler, his former position was a teacher at MIT Labs, teaching a cryptocurrency course and running a digital currency lab. Well, in this video, I'm going to talk about who actually funded that lab and how it's actually showing that the same people involved in making the decision that Ethereum is not a security, but XRP is, are linked to the same people who funded the lab and some people that'll make you want to throw up. And in other cryptocurrency news, there is now 50,000 people that have joined John Deaton in his class action lawsuit against the SEC for this undue case against Ripple. I will put a link in the description down below. You can actually go sign up if you are not already a part of that class action lawsuit. I actually have some information about this class action lawsuit that if you've already signed up, you'll want to pay attention to. And big news for Bitcoin. A Bitcoin ETF has just been approved, not a futures-based Bitcoin ETF, which is basically just a bet. I'm talking about a real ETF where actual Bitcoin will be purchased. I have some information about it in this video. Hey everyone, my name is Randy and welcome back to the Late Night Grind. And right now on this channel, I am covering the Ripple versus SEC case, as well as other cryptocurrency news, investment markets, and personal finance. So if any of those topics interest you, make sure you hit the subscribe button and also hit that bell notification icon so YouTube will send you a notification when I release a new video. And if you are feeling generous today, I'd really appreciate it if you do two things. Number one, smash that thumbs up button. And number two, watch this video all the way to the end. Those are really the two best things that you can do to support a YouTube channel. So if you do that, I greatly appreciate it. All right, guys, well, let's jump into it. So I wanted to give some information about the class action lawsuit that John Deaton is putting together for XRP holders to actually go after the SEC because the SEC is not doing their job. They're not protecting investors, they're actually hurting investors. So there are now 50,000 people involved, and if you are not involved in that lawsuit yet, you can actually go and sign up. I'll put a link in the description of this video below. You can go sign up. It's really easy. Just put in your name and some contact details. You can also sign up anonymously where none of your actual contact details will be used. But in the meantime, John Deaton has been on Twitter telling people that he is sending out emails with information about what they signed up for. But a lot of people have been confused because there's some of those emails have been going out with other people's names. So he's been trying to get the word out that you can still go ahead and open up those emails. You're either going to get an email from John Deaton himself or from two of his staff members, which go by Jordan S. and Rachel B. So if you get emails from any of those three names, it is legit. It is from his crypto law firm. You can go ahead and open those emails. It is not a spam or scam of any kind, but it is still good to be sure. And I also wanted to point out that before I made this video, I was on Twitter looking up some different pieces of information, and one of the feeds that I usually look at is attorney Jeremy Hogan, who has been covering this case just like a lot of other people, sharing his very thoughtful insights due to his being an actual attorney. Well, he put out a tweet that said he will likely be off Twitter and YouTube for some time as a member of his staff was actually in a bad car accident last night, and he was asking for prayer. So if you want to go ahead and support Jeremy, go give him a thumbs up on his Twitter feed and offer some prayers to his staff. And so what John Deaton is actually trying to get to, trying to accomplish with this class action lawsuit is actually trying to get to 100,000 people to join. He's actually been recruiting some big influencers online, specifically on Twitter. He's actually gotten a few very big Twitter influencers that have 500,000-600,000 Twitter followers to actually retweet that lawsuit where you can go sign up from. So like I said, if you are not already signed up, go ahead and do so. And bullish news continues to come in for Bitcoin. This regarding an actual ETF that has been approved. Where? Well, not in the United States. That would be far too forward-thinking for the United States regulators to do. No, this is actually in Australia. Yeah, you know, the same Australia where they won't even let people leave their house to go get a bite to eat or go for a walk. They're literally not even letting people leave their house. But they are now going to be accepting applications and approving Bitcoin spot ETFs. That means fund managers in Australia can now put together an application for a Bitcoin spot ETF, and this is big. So like I said, the difference between a spot ETF and a futures-based ETF is that a futures-based ETF is basically a bet against the future price of Bitcoin, whereas a spot ETF, Bitcoin is actually purchased. So in my opinion, it's still best to actually go out and buy Bitcoin yourself, but we know there is a huge market of very, very wealthy people out there that don't really want to have to deal with all the technicalities of doing that, so it's just easier for them with a couple of clicks can move large amounts of investment funds into a Bitcoin ETF. in which Bitcoin will actually be purchased on their behalf, and it will be custodied for them. So they don't need to worry about wallets, private keys, and things like that. But it did say that fund managers actually putting together ETFs and ETF applications is going to have a Bitcoin custodial expert in order to help keep their Bitcoin safe and secure. And as Australia can't do anything and they can't even leave their house, maybe they'll actually spend their time buying Bitcoin. I just find it kind of interesting that the governmental sectors that is essentially enforcing lockdowns and even more government control is actually now approving a Bitcoin ETF, because Bitcoin is kind of the antithesis of government control. And speaking of government, our current head of the SEC, Gary Gensler, who is now well known that his previous job was teaching blockchain technology as an MIT Labs researcher and teacher. Well, recently, in the past week, a lot of people have been doing some unbelievable investigation work that is now uncovering who actually started that lab and who is actually funding it. And I'm actually going to put a link in the description below to an article that outlines some of this along with all their sources. But just follow along. So Gary Gensler, before he actually went to MIT, he actually taught at a Sloan School for Management. Now, in the Sloan School for Management, there's actually multiple videos and documents of him declaring XRP as a bank currency, not a security. However, when he started teaching at MIT Labs, there are now multiple videos showing where he was kind of starting to change his stance on it. Meanwhile, he called it a currency in one video. He also said most likely it'll be fought out in the courts whether XRP is actually a security or not. Interesting how he knew that several years before this actually happened. So a lot of people think, well, Gary Gensler taught at MIT. It probably means it was an MIT sanctioned course and they recruited Gary Gensler to teach there. Well, that's only half true. But the MIT Labs was actually privately funded, not by MIT. So Gary Gensler's collaborator at the MIT Labs was actually a man named Joi Ito. Joi Ito happened to be a very close friend of Jeffrey Epstein. In fact, he was on the flight list of Jeffrey Epstein's aircraft and visited Jeffrey Epstein's island multiple times. Now, through this, he was actually able to secure the first round of funding for the MIT Labs in the amount of $525,000 directly from Jeffrey Epstein. And later on after that, he was able to secure another round of $1.2 million directly from Jeffrey Epstein. And through that, they were able to secure another $7.5 million worth of funding from others such as Bill Gates and Leon Black. Who is Leon Black? Well, Leon Black was the former chairman of Apollo Funds Management, who was recently replaced by guess who? Jay Clayton, the guy who signed his name to sue Ripple. In fact, it was reported that Epstein had visited MIT and the MIT labs up to 9 times, and it was reported that he visited these labs with several female escorts. And they said while he was there, it was basically to discuss what the lab's research was finding and discuss future donations. Now, after the Epstein investigation actually had begun, MIT actually listed him as disqualified from sending donations to MIT. However, what they did in order to get around that was they just listed his donations as anonymous. They just tried to do that to get around all the red flags that it would raise after the Epstein investigation had actually begun. Now, this report actually goes on to say that several people were starting to question what Jeffrey Epstein was actually doing, including one whistleblower by the name of, and I'm probably going to mess up her name, Signe Swenson, who pushed and questioned what was actually going on with Jeffrey Epstein. But it was also reported that others there kind of knew what was going on but kept their mouth shut. Others like Gary Gensler, because he was sitting on a giant pile of Jeffrey Epstein's money. So this is just some of the information that has recently been dug up within the last week or so. I'm going to put a link in the description below that outlines this article as well as some of the sources and the reports that it actually came from. So if you've been following my channel and the case versus the SEC, you can see that some of these stories just get shadier and more disgusting by the day. And not only that, on my next video, I'm going to be talking about what was done in 2014 that the founders of Ethereum did to get Ethereum passed without regulation to essentially become a token factory, as one Twitter user called it, accurately. And how they actually got away with it. Meanwhile, Ripple didn't because they filled out their application properly. So I'm going to cover that in my next video. So if you want to follow along with that and any of all these other topics, make sure you subscribe to the Late Night Grind. And as always, I really appreciate all the thumbs up and watching all the way to the end of this video. And if you're seeing 2 videos right here, it means that YouTube thinks that one of these 2 videos is right up your alley. So go ahead and check that out. And as always, I'll see you guys on the next video.